You know, as someone who's been a critic of the entertainment industry for a couple of years now, I've come to learn that there's a certain line you must carefully cross in order to be a good critic. Whether that be objectivity, fairness, and a willingness to try new things, being a critic is a careful balance of elements, with at the center of it all being honesty. Honesty in your opinions of something, and honesty for the media it is you cover. However, in recent years, there's been a growing trend online that has taken the honesty of fair criticism and blurred the lines between objectivity and personal insecurities, aka grifters. Now, if you're familiar with my channel, then you'd know that I am no stranger to talking about these sort of channels, who use grifting and the scummy tactics that come along with it in order to try and farm outrage, with the critical drinker in particular being one of the slimiest people to do so, as he's someone who I've talked a fair few times about now, with him often trying to lie to his audience in order to peddle a grift, with his lying getting to a point of feeling pathetically satirical now, with this video in particular being a perfect example of just some of the scummy tactics grifters like the critical drinker will try to pull in order to take advantage of their audience, by sacrificing their integrities as critics in order to leech off outrage and political weaponization. But before we begin, just for a little refresher, what exactly is a grifter, and how exactly can you spot one? Well, grifters typically are people who try to sell you on an idea, regardless of whether or not it holds any real merit. Essentially, they are the snake oil salesman tactic, only in this case of content creators, they'll take even the slightest bit of controversy and outrage and try to sell you on it being the biggest problem in the world. Essentially, if you give them an inch, they'll often take a mile, with a failure to understand real problems in the industry. Heck, they don't even have to believe what it is they're selling. As long as it appeals to the grift they're trying to push, they'll keep pumping it, because it's a guaranteed way to profit at the cost of genuine criticism. Hence why we get so many who unironically use the term woke as a buzzword to call something bad, despite never justifying why that might be the case beyond the lazy superficial complaints like politics ruins everything and masculinity is at threat. And in terms of how to spot one, I recommend you go watch Anthony's video on this topic. It's a really well made case study on distinguishing the different types of grifting and when someone goes from personal opinions to just downright spreading misinformation. I'll leave a link to their video in the description of this one, so be sure to go check it out after, because I think it's a really good video and they did a really good job of making it. But back to the critical drinker. I really felt like I needed to talk about this video in particular because it's stuff like this that just highlight how easy it is to be swept up in misinformation, and why when it comes to these quote-unquote critics, you can't really trust what it is they're trying to say, because they're not here to give you a genuine review or their own personal opinion or even try to educate their viewers, but rather play to the lowest bait possible in order to milk engagement dry. Or simply put, the critical drinker and grifters like him are fake reviewers who are often hypocritical liars. After all, look no further than Drinker's DCU video. There are many occasions here where he's either missing the point of the media he's covering, or is just straight up being deceptive, such as with his claims that Superman was a flop.
An article in Forbes a couple of days ago painted a grim picture of Superman's box office performance. With a total haul of 615 million worldwide, the movie cleared just over 300 million after all the distributor fees were paid, nowhere near the 350 million needed to cover production and marketing costs. This, dear viewer, is what we call a flop.
Despite the movie making over $600 million at the box office, garnering millions of views on HBO Max in only 10 days, and already being greenlit a sequel set to release 2 years from now, The Drinker still claims that Superman was a flop, based off an article that claims to know what the production cost of the movie was. even though production costs have never been public information, and the article he sources never states what its sources are, and instead credits itself as the source. Which basically means the validity of the information is shaky at best, and given the success plus what James Gunn has said himself, I think it's safe to say that the information here was not accurate at all. But it doesn't stop there, as he goes on to imply both Peacemaker and Creature Commandos were both failures, and that all James Gunn does now is turn all of his most recent works into Guardians of the Galaxy clones, which, is not only incredibly inaccurate, but also demonstrates just how ineffective Drinker is as a critic. With him giving such bare-bones criticisms, they honestly could be applied to hundreds of other movies and still be accurate, as it's not a real critique he's giving, but just a basic description dressed up by selective language in order to seem like real criticism.
Watch any James Gunn movie or TV show and you've pretty much seen them all because they all adhere to the same basic formula. A bunch of flawed but likeable misfits are forced to team up and have to work together to take down some big overarching threat, eventually becoming a kind of dysfunctional family along the way. Usually accompanied by a lot of snarky, self-deprecating humour, incongruous pop music that underscores big action set pieces, and a troubled protagonist with a dark past.
Honestly, there's so many false statements in this video that if I were to go over them all, one by one, we'd be here all day. But if that's something you're interested in, then I recommend you go watch the Birdman's video on Drinker's Lies too, as he goes into far more depth than I ever could here, and shares a lot of the same thoughts that I do. So I'll leave a link to his video in the description of this one as well, in case you want to see a full breakdown on the lies that Drinker says here. Because as fun as it would be to disprove more of his claims myself, I feel like there's a bigger aspect going on here that we need to talk about more. That being, if you remove all of the lies, remove all of the pandering that these guys do, the Drinker just doesn't understand movies as an art form in general. With him having a very basic understanding of what it is films try to do. After all, let's go back to his Glass Onion review for an example. He complained so much about the characters, especially what they wear and how they look, saying that it's ridiculous and thus completely misses the fact that that's the entire point. Each character has a specific design to them, and their clothing in order to visually convey the type of person they are and what we can expect from them. It's like animation, but that's an attention to detail far too subtle for the Drinker to realize. And in case you needed more proof, just look at his Barbie review for instance. He claims that Barbie is a bad movie because it's essentially feminist propaganda with unrealistic standards applied to the world that prove the creators hate men. Once again, missing the fact that the over-the-top aspect was the point of the movie to demonstrate why the issues when applied to any group, either men or women, is still a bad thing, and completely missing the point, the fact that it's making him feel uncomfortable is sort of the idea. Plus, he also said the Barbie movie tricked everyone with its marketing campaign, despite it, being pretty clear from the trailers what type of movie it was going to be. And there's many, many more quote-unquote reviews by him that do stuff similar to this, with Drinker either lying about what it is he's covering, or just simply missing the point of what it is he's covering, all because he's so blinded by his own preferences or political beliefs that he can't see what the movies he's talking about are really trying to say. I think you can begin to see why someone who doesn't understand art being the same person to judge it isn't really a good idea, especially considering your job is supposed to be giving fair and unbiased opinions on entertainment media, and yet you still can't get over Brie Larson and Star Wars shows that ended ages ago. And just in case you needed any more confirmation that the Drinker doesn't truly understand art, then simply look no further than the time he made his own movie, Rogue Elements. Based off his own book series, this short film pretty much sums up everything wrong with the Drinker. He thinks he knows more than he really does, and gets so far ahead of himself that he misses everything. Like, Rogue Elements has stuff that he himself has criticized in other movies. For example, a strong female character who's able to beat up a guy who's twice her size and who, by his own definition, should logically be able to overpower them. The critical drinker, in my opinion at least, is a grifter beginning to run on fumes, with more and more people beginning to realize he holds very little in terms of genuine critiques, and is overall shallow in his approach to films. He's someone who goes to show what happens when you don't cross the critic line correctly. You will end up losing all of your integrity for the sake of cheap and easy YouTube clicks, forcing to fall back on politics or certain individuals in order to justify his views on movies, and ultimately being too clueless to realize just how much damage he and others just like him have done to the internet media critic space, in a way that may never recover. But what do you guys think? Do you agree with what I have to say on the drinker, or is there anything that you disagree with here? Let me know everything you guys have to say down in the comments below. I'm interested to see what you guys think of this topic, and if there's anything else that you've noticed the critical drinker do that might be worth mentioning. And if you enjoyed today's video, then maybe consider subscribing. It not only tells me you want to see more content just like this, but it helps me make that content for you guys a whole lot faster. But with that, peeps, it's been the Pink King here, and I will see you all next time.